Unwanted pregnancy and sexually transmitted diseases are affecting adolescents at younger ages than ever, in part due to various ways that youth can be exposed to content containing sexuality and sexual themes. Today's youth are exposed to sex and sexual themes when they watch TV or movies, view commercials, browse the internet, and even play video games. My name is Kirsten Couch, and today I would like you to join me in a discussion about sexual education and sexual health education, or just sex ed, and why this education should start as early as 5th grade and repeat annually after. According to an article from the University of South Carolina Nursing, in 2016, the university had higher rates of teen pregnancy and sexually transmitted diseases than most other industrialized countries. This is related to a fact from an article from the Brazilian Nursing Association, which states that adolescents do not know their own bodies and may be unable to recognize the symptoms of STIs and the transition of methods of AIDS. Pregnancy and sexually transmitted diseases in teenagers could be decreased with the right knowledge presented at the right time. Sexual education should be taught as early as 5th grade and annually after, because the lack of information leaves them vulnerable, inconsistencies can lead to false information, and abstinence-only focused education leaves gaps for curious children to misinform themselves. America has a problem with unwanted teenage pregnancy and adolescent sexually transmitted diseases, likely due to lack of information and not understanding the need for protection. Sex education is about life skills, says the University of South Carolina Nursing. If these topics are going to affect us for the rest of our lives, shouldn't we mandate refresher courses for regular continued education? Abstinence-only focused education programs show little evidence of sustained long-term impact on attitudes towards sex, and show negative impacts on youth's willingness to use contraceptions, including condoms. This discussion was from an article called Sex Education in Public Schools in a journal called Virtual Mentor. This is a chart showing the total births per 1,000 teenage females across the United States for the year 2017. Check out Texas, where the teenage pregnancy rate was 26 to 32 females. And here's Florida with 16 to 21 pregnant teenage females. Last, let's look at Maine with only 8 to 13 pregnant teenage females. Now on this slide, the first chart shows which states do not even require sex education in schools, and notice that Texas and Florida are highlighted, and Maine is not. The second chart shows where if sex education is offered, the program requires only information on abstinence-only education, but does not offer information to be shared on contraceptive methods. Notice again that Texas and Florida are highlighted, but Maine is not. You can see the correlation between Maine's education and the low teenage pregnancy rate. Homeschooled education of sex ed, waiting until later grades to introduce sex ed, and abstinence-only focused education are only some of the views opposing teaching sex education at an earlier age. Teaching children sex education at home can lead to inconsistencies due to individual parental knowledge of the subject and social customs. Parents may choose to teach children at different ages. Children are also likely to share with friends. If the friends have no background information, they can misunderstand. This is information I gathered from an article titled Little Birds and Bees by Kirsten. She discusses how as soon as she received the talk from her parents, she went straight to her little sister to share the juicy details. Waiting until 7th or 8th grade to begin teaching sex education may be too late. Unfortunately, it is common for young teens to begin to recognize and attempt to interpret sexuality and sexual themes as soon as they enter middle school, if not sooner. The belief that abstinence-only education is enough to keep children from learning sexual behaviors is a weak hope that children will understand what is good for them just because we told them what not to do. Unfortunately, once children are exposed by outside sources to an idea, curiosity will have them experimenting and without any of the precautions that they could have learned. You know the rest. Ignorance is not bliss. Teaching students as young as 5th grade in public school systems about comprehensive sexual education will secure educated knowledge in our youth and prevent misinterpretations due to false information. According to the Brazilian Nursing Association, the school is a favorable environment for the promotion of adolescent health because it can guide the decision-making and conduct of adolescents. Students are already accustomed to learning truth and facts from the school system, and this would make it easier to absorb even this material. When sex education is comprehensive, students feel more informed, making safer choices and have healthier outcomes, resulting in fewer unplanned pregnancy and more protection against sexually transmitted diseases and infections. This, again, comes from the University of South Carolina Nursing. Preparing youth as young as 5th grade prepares them for the changes in their environment from elementary school to middle school. Hormones will already be affecting some of these children, and having knowledge before these changes will make them feel more comfortable with themselves. Students who are armed with educated information are less likely to believe false information. When youth are armed with educated information, they can spend their curiosity focused on other matters, like their personal growth and academics, while being able to learn from their environment about sexuality with a strong, informed background. According to an article from Planned Parenthood, school health programs can have positive effects on educational outcomes, as well as health risk behaviors and health outcomes. This is because health risk behaviors, such as early sexual initiation, are consistently linked to lower test grades, lower grades, and lower educational attainment. Having the right programs in place can help prevent these health risk behaviors. Evaluations of comprehensive sex education programs show that these programs can help youth delay the onset of sexual activity, reduce the number of sexual partners, and increase condom and contraceptive use. This comes from an article discussing comprehensive sex education written for the advocates for youth. When children are armed with information, it is easier to make the right decisions. The same article also says, students who are involved in pregnancy or experience sexually transmitted infections or diseases, or HIV, face major obstacles to academic success, but schools have the opportunity to help students avoid these barriers to success. Comprehensive sex education helps students protect their sexual health and avoid these negative outcomes. Whether you are a parent or not, I implore you to vote to support federal funding for public school programs that both encourage teens to postpone sex and provide information on contraceptive options and the prevention of sexually transmitted diseases. Public support for sex education in the school system is not enough. It can be tough to get ideas into policy and policies into practice. According to an article from the Sexuality, Information, and Education Council of the United States, only 38% of all high schools and 14% of middle schools in the United States cover all 16 of the topics identified by the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention as critical sex education topics. This leaves a lot of gaps in America's public school system for children to fill in with their own information. The power to decide how the current and following generations of children are taught sexual education and sexual health is in the hands of this generation of voters. Think of your own first impressions of sexuality if you can, and think about how much or what kind of sexual education and sex health education you had. Would you have wished anything to be different? Do you think you might have had an easier time of puberty and navigating the world of sexuality if you had more available and comprehensive sexual education? This is something we can put in place for our children and our children's children. Support comprehensive and repeated sexual education in public schools, starting as early as 5th grade.